The journey, it starts with an idea. Over time, you sort of think a bit more about this idea, and then you get to a point where you really can't get it out of your head. For me, it really was the technical solution to a problem that I thought could be solved and could become a business. We are creating value in what we're doing, but actually it's a lot more than that. We're trying to change the way people think about heating.
I have severe asthma myself, and that was really the main motivating factor for me. The long-term goal is to be an international company, driving change, and to be the catalyst for more innovation in this space. We want to drive new clinical pathways for respiratory medicine across the globe. It's a big ambition. We're at the beginning of that journey.
All my parents and grandparents worked down the mines. Now I'm doing software. Nobody even knew what software was when my dad left school. We've achieved our mission of changing the world with regards to how dyslexia and visual impairment is integrated into websites.
There are two sources of value. Often people focus narrowly on shareholder value. That's the value that goes to investors in the form of profits and dividends. But that misses a second really important source of value, which is stakeholder value.
We transform lives and organisations by delivering transformative tech education, which builds inclusive routes into tech careers. We're also a business. And I think what we're really lucky with at Makers is that those two things are mutually reinforcing.
Following your purpose, as long as it's defined as contributing value in some way, is the best route, many studies are now showing, to delivering long-term profit.
To my mind, purpose would be something that is probably longer term, something that is sustainable. It will last over a very meaningful period of time.
People think that the only goal of purpose is it's good for wider society. But I'm stressing that purpose is good for the business itself. If other companies out there are only taking decisions that can be justified by financial analysis, if you have a different set of decision criterion, you will go above and beyond and take different decisions from your competitors and be one step ahead.
The dream is that your purpose then reinforces the profitability of the business. And that's the kind of reinforcing cycle that you're always looking for, and which I feel we're very lucky that Makers really benefits from.
Arguably, the primary quality for many of the entrepreneurs that we back would be resilience, because there are going to probably be more challenging days than good days. There will be many great plans that will be executed, but then will hit blocks in the road. So I think the ability to absorb disappointment, setback, regroup, learn, go again is probably fundamental.
I think one of the complicated things in uncertain times is that as the environment around you changes, you have to think about how to adjust your approach in line with your purpose, but also in line with a disrupted and changing environment. And that requires judgment every time. It's not always easy.
I think it's very much about understanding that this is a long-term objective, but it's also exhilarating. Cornerstone VC is an early-stage pre-seed and seed VC firm. Our purpose is to address the imbalance of venture capital towards underrepresented founders.
I think as a leader of a business that's growing, you have to ask yourself whether you're doing the right things for the stage of the business. 5 years ago, there were two of us in a concrete bunker building prototypes. I was very much an engineer. 5.5 years later, I'm focusing on our long-term strategy and building our culture and managing our team.
Ultimately, I'm accountable for the business, so I do have to look out for profitability, and sometimes that does mean putting the longer-term purpose on hold to focus on nearer-term revenue-generating opportunities. So it's definitely a daily balance that it has to be struck.
And in certain times, it's probably inevitable that there can be a distraction from purpose, because the need to focus on the short term will increase. So not easy to do, but I think it's just more important to continue to have real clarity on the longer term.
The role of the workforce is key in any organisation. Human capital is arguably the most important asset in any company. It is not plant and machinery anymore.
So listening to people and helping people feel that they have some agency in their working conditions and how they bring their best skills and human capabilities to work is really important.
I think what's also important is giving people the opportunity to bring their whole selves into the workplace and not feel like they need to live a double life between what they're doing inside work and what they're doing at home.
Having great culture, having a team that is one and united means that when something bad happens and things go wrong all the time, you are more resilient because of the team that's been built, because of the culture in the company, and because everyone is looking after everyone else.
We challenge each other. That is what makes companies succeed. So once you form your conclusion as a team, you all move forward with that same perspective on where you're going.
I think a company that is growing in a good way is actually having a positive impact on the world, which improves the more it grows. So I think a business that's growing should ask itself one question: why is the world a better place because we are growing?
Good growth for me is about moving away from short-term wins, and it's much more about involving all stakeholders, whether they be shareholders, whether they be the wider community, whether that be individuals in the public sphere or the private sphere.
When I was younger, there was a skepticism towards business because it was coming from a mining town that was largely government-owned. But I do think that local companies can do a lot for local people.
We've got great insight into different businesses in different regions, and it's increasingly clear how strong the links are between businesses and their regions and where they are located.
Even if a company is focused on profit, it does need to treat society well. And why is that an important message for small businesses? The value that you create for wider society ultimately comes back to you and manifests in long-term profit. What is good for stakeholders is typically good for shareholders in the long term.
Business has such a critical role to play in creating a future that we actively want to live in and hand on, but it needs to be focused on the right things.
If you do it in the right way, it will normalise doing it in the right way. So more people will want to create more ethical, sustainable businesses that are profitable, and it'll have that knock-on effect.
There is not enough awareness of what can be achieved and how businesses can be built and created and grown in a way that really is sustainable.
Whether or not business chooses to take the long view for an idealistic reason, I think you certainly do see that business can have an incredibly powerful impact on society, often a very powerful impact for good.
There's obviously lots of unknowns. I do spend a lot of time trying to dream about the future. To be honest, I think that's my job.
I've got young kids of my own, and I think a lot of what I'm doing now is about trying to contribute to a world that is hopefully no worse than it is now, ideally a bit better.